The morning of my 40th birthday started like a dream. Sunlight streamed through our bedroom curtains as Sarah entered with a tray of my favorite breakfast. The smell of fresh coffee and blueberry pancakes filled the air. Our teenagers Abigail and Jackson stood awkwardly in the doorway. Sarah's smile seemed brighter than usual as she placed a gift box on my lap. But when I opened it, divorce papers stared back at me. Her laughter cut through my shock. "Happy birthday, Benedict," she said coldly. "I want everything we built together." Before I tell you how my entire life collapsed that morning, drop a comment where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had your trust completely shattered. I built my engineering firm from nothing but determination and caffeine. 15 years ago, fresh out of college with an engineering degree and student loans, I converted my parents' old garage into a makeshift office. The first 2 years were brutal. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. No vacations, no social life, just pure grind. You need balance. Benedict, my friends would say their concern genuine, but misplaced. They didn't understand the vision I had, the future I was building. By the 3rd year, I hired my first 2 employees. By year 5, we moved into a real office space. Now, 15 years later, Benedict Engineering Solutions employs over 50 people and handles multi-million-dollar contracts across 3 states. Last year, we finally purchased our dream home in Oakwood Estates, the kind of neighborhood I used to drive through as a broke college student wondering what it would be like to live there. I met Sarah during my sophomore year of college. She was studying business administration, ambitious and sharp. Our connection was immediate. She understood my drive, my ambitions, and during those early garage days of my company, she was right there beside me. Many nights she'd bring dinner to the garage, massage my shoulders, as I hunched over blueprints, and remind me to sleep occasionally. "We're investing in our future," she would say, her eyes bright with shared dreams. Temporary sacrifice, permanent reward. The early years of marriage weren't easy. We lived in a tiny apartment, pinching pennies, both working long hours. When Abigail came along, followed by Jackson 2 years later, the pressure intensified. But we were a team navigating parenthood and entrepreneurship together. At least that's what I believed. Looking back, I should have noticed the shifts beginning about a year ago. After we moved into the new house, Sarah's spending habits changed dramatically. Suddenly, our joint credit card statements showed frequent shopping sprees at luxury boutiques. Her wardrobe transformed from practical to designer. Her circle of friends changed too. Gone were her longtime college buddies, replaced by the wives of wealthy businessmen from our new neighborhood. "I'm just trying to fit in here," she explained, when I questioned a $3,000 handbag purchase. "This is networking for us, Benedict. These women's husbands could become clients." I believed her because I wanted to. Because after 15 years of struggle and sacrifice, we had finally made it. If my wife wanted to enjoy some luxury, hadn't she earned it? The late nights with girlfriends increased. The mysterious phone calls she would take in another room. The way she would password protect her phone when she never had before. My children changed too. Abigail, once my little shadow who loved helping in the garage, became distant at 16. Jackson, my sports buddy, suddenly had no time for our weekend games. They both seemed embarrassed by me, despite my success, or perhaps because of it. They became entitled, expecting expensive gifts, the latest technology, brand name everything. "Dad, everyone at school has one," became their mantra whenever I questioned the necessity of $800 sneakers or another gaming console. But I kept working heads down and expanding the business, convincing myself that teenage attitude was normal and marriage ebbs and flows were to be expected. The morning of my 40th birthday, that perfectly orchestrated betrayal plays in my mind like a movie I can't turn off. The breakfast in bed. The quiet, almost solemn expressions on my children's faces. Sarah's overly bright voice as she handed me the box wrapped in silver paper with a blue bow, my favorite colors. "A special gift for a special day," she said, and I remember thinking how beautiful she looked, how lucky I was. Then I opened it. Inside, legal documents. Divorce filing. Already processed, dated 3 weeks earlier. My confusion must have shown because Sarah's face changed, her smile, becoming something cruel and unfamiliar. Surprised, she asked, her voice completely changed. "Did you think I was going to play the dutiful wife forever, while you built your little empire?" Abigail and Jackson stood in the doorway, their expressions hard, almost contemptuous. "Kids, what's happening?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Don't call us that anymore," Abigail said, her voice cold. "We're not kids, and after today, you're not really our father." Mom told us everything, Jackson added. How you were never there. How you chose your business over us every time. Sarah smiled at them approvingly before turning back to me. I've hired Andrew Patterson, best divorce attorney in the state. We're asking for 75% of all assets, full custody and monthly support. She leaned closer, dropping her voice. And I'll get it all, Benedict. I've made sure of that. She straightened up, glancing at her watch. You have 2 hours to pack essentials and leave. My lawyer advised me to tell you that if you're not gone by noon, we'll file for an emergency protective order. Protective order, I stammered, completely lost. Sarah, I've never. It's your word against mine, she cut me off. And I've been keeping a detailed journal of your emotional abuse for years. She smiled sweetly. Fictional, of course, but very convincing. Now, pack your things. The children and I have lunch plans. As they left our bedroom, I heard Abigail say, Can we go to that new French place downtown? I want to try their truffle pasta. Just like that, on a sunny Saturday morning, my life of 15 years shattered into unrecognizable pieces. The next few days passed in a blur of disbelief and mounting horror. I checked into the West Side Motel, the kind of place that charges by the week and doesn't ask questions when a middle-aged man shows up with one suitcase and hollow eyes. I discovered my credit cards had been canceled when I tried to pay for the room. Thankfully, I had enough cash to cover a week. When I called our bank, I learned that our joint savings account, which had contained nearly $300,000, now held $12.37. The maximum ATM withdrawal had been taken daily for weeks. Then a final transfer 3 days before my birthday had emptied it. My business account had a temporary freeze, pending legal review. Sarah had already filed financial paperwork, claiming that as the company's unofficial consultant during its formation, she was entitled to a significant ownership stake. When I tried calling Abigail and Jackson, their phones went straight to voicemail. My text showed as delivered but received no response. I drove to their school on Monday morning, desperate to see them to explain my side, but was met by a security guard, who informed me that I had been removed from the approved contact list. When I protested, he threatened to call the police. Through a business associate who took pity on me, I got the name of Jessica Martinez, an attorney who specialized in divorces, but wasn't part of the country club circuit that Andrew Patterson dominated. She agreed to meet me that afternoon, listening patiently as I poured out my story. I'll be honest with you, Mr. Warner, she said when I finished. This looks meticulously planned. Your wife has been preparing for this for at least a year, maybe longer. But why, I asked the question that kept me awake at night. Why now, when things were finally good? When we had everything we worked for, Jessica's expression was sympathetic but practical. Because now there's something to take. 5 years ago, a divorce would have gotten her child support, but not much else. Now there's a successful business, a luxury home investment accounts. She leaned forward. And from what you've described about the sudden lifestyle changes, there might be someone else involved. Someone who helped her plan this. The first court appearance came just 2 weeks after my birthday. I sat beside Jessica, at one table, while Sarah and her attorney, a silver-haired man in a suit that probably cost more than my car, sat at the other. Sarah wouldn't make eye contact with me, but I could see the smug smile playing at her lips. Andrew Patterson painted a devastating picture of me as an absent workaholic father who prioritized business success over family relationships. He claimed my emotional distance had caused Sarah years of suffering, that the children had grown up essentially without a father present. He presented Sarah's fictional journal, along with statements from her new friends testifying to her visible distress in their social interactions. The judge, an older woman who seemed predisposed to believe the worst about successful men, issued temporary orders, giving Sarah control of our home, primary custody of the children, and most shockingly, temporary management control of my business to preserve marital assets. Your client can continue his employment at the firm he founded, the judge told Jessica. But financial decisions will require Mrs. Warner's approval, pending final settlement. I watched Sarah's face as the ruling was announced. The flash of victory in her eyes quickly masked, with an expression of solemn relief. She had rehearsed this, prepared for this moment. And I had never seen it coming. Outside the courtroom, I heard my daughter's voice. Abigail and Jackson had apparently been waiting in the hallway. They stood with Sarah, now flanking her protectively as if I were the threat. Abby, Jackson, please, I called out, moving toward them. Just talk to me for 5 minutes. Stay away from them, Sarah warned loudly, attracting attention from people passing by. Kids, go wait in the car with Diane. She gestured to one of her new friends who appeared at her side. As they walked away, I heard Jackson say, "When can we make the name change official, Mom? I don't want his name anymore." Abigail looked back just once, and for a moment I thought I saw confusion in her eyes. But then she turned away, her arm linked with her brother's, walking away from 13 years of bedtime stories, weekend pancakes, science fair projects, and soccer games. The financial destruction came swiftly after that. With Sarah having approval rights over business decisions, partners began losing confidence. 3 major clients, hearing rumors of instability, took their projects elsewhere. I was still showing up every day trying to keep things afloat, but my employees could sense something was wrong. 2 senior engineers resigned within a week. I had to downgrade from the motel to a tiny studio apartment that smelled perpetually of the Indian restaurant below it. I sold my watch, my golf clubs, even my laptop to pay Jessica's retainer. Friends I had thought were solid gradually stopped returning calls, especially couples we had socialized with. It seemed Sarah had been working the social circuit, telling her version of events. The lowest point came 3 months after my birthday. I was grabbing takeout from Giovanni's, an Italian place that had once been our family's special occasion restaurant. As I waited for my order, I heard familiar laughter from a semi-private alcove in the back. Sarah's laugh, followed by Abigail's. I shouldn't have looked. I should have taken my food and left. But something pulled me toward their table, keeping me hidden behind a decorative wine rack. Sarah sat with both kids and a man I didn't recognize. Handsome in an artificial way, probably 10 years younger than me. They were dressed for an occasion, Sarah in a black dress I'd never seen the kids in formal wear. God, his face. When the judge gave me control of the company, Sarah was saying, wine glass in hand, worth every minute of planning. "You earned it, babe," the man said, squeezing her shoulder. "Putting up with him for all those years while he built something worth taking." To Mom, Abigail raised her water glass, for finally getting what she deserves. And to James, Jackson added, nodding to the strange man, for showing us what a real father figure looks like. Speaking of which, Sarah said, lowering her voice slightly, "I talked to my attorney today. He says the name change paperwork should be processed by next month. You'll officially be Abigail and Jackson Morrison." "Good," my son said firmly. "Warner sounds like a brand of cheap underwear anyway." They all laughed, clinking glasses, while I stood frozen, the final pieces of my heart turning to dust. The turning point came from the most unexpected place. Jessica called one evening, her voice tense with controlled excitement. "Benedict, I need you to come to my office first thing tomorrow. Bring every piece of financial documentation from the company's first 5 years that you can find. Tax returns, bank statements, everything." "What's happening?" I asked, confused by her urgency. My paralegal noticed something while reviewing the business records Sarah submitted to the court. Discrepancies in the bookkeeping that didn't make sense. "I hired a forensic accountant to take a deeper look." She paused. "Just get here at 8 tomorrow, and don't discuss this with anyone." The forensic accountant, a meticulous woman named Eleanor, had discovered a pattern of small but consistent financial irregularities dating back 6 years. Funds being moved between accounts in a way that concealed their final destination. Client payments slightly misreported, the differences skimmed off somewhere else. "Someone has been embezzling from your company for years," Eleanor explained, showing me spreadsheets highlighting the discrepancies. "At first it was small amounts, but it increased over time. Based on our analysis, approximately $850,000 has been diverted over 6 years. But who I asked, though deep down, I already knew. The transactions all required authorization codes that only 2 people had," Jessica said quietly. "You and Sarah." Further investigation revealed offshore accounts in Sarah's maiden name opened during a girls' trip to the Cayman Islands 3 years earlier. Tax fraud had been carefully orchestrated with my signature forged on multiple documents. The plan, it seemed, had always been to build up the company, then take it along with everything else, leaving me as the fall guy for any financial irregularities that might eventually be discovered. The second unexpected development came a week later. A certified letter arrived at my tiny apartment from a law firm I didn't recognize. My Uncle Walter, my father's estranged brother, whom I hadn't seen since childhood, had passed away. To my complete shock, he had left his entire estate to me, his only living relative. Uncle Walter, it turned out, had made a fortune in real estate development in the Pacific Northwest. Though we hadn't spoken in decades, the letter explained that he had followed my career from afar, proud of what I had built on my own. His estate, conservatively valued at $12 million, was now mine, along with his modernist mansion overlooking Puget Sound. The executor of the estate, a pragmatic attorney named Michael Brennan, became an unexpected ally when I explained my situation. "Don't disclose this inheritance during divorce proceedings," he advised. "It's separate property acquired after separation. We'll create a trust to protect these assets." With resources I hadn't possessed before our counterattack took shape, Jessica assembled a team of forensic accountants who meticulously documented every instance of Sarah's financial misconduct. An investigator uncovered evidence of her long-term affair with James Morrison, a hedge fund manager with his own history of financial improprieties. Most crucially, we discovered communications, proving they had conspired together on the divorce strategy, planning it for over 2 years. I reconnected with Thomas Grayson, a college friend who now worked as a district attorney. Though he couldn't directly involve himself in my civil case, his guidance proved invaluable, particularly when our investigation revealed that James had his own history of securities fraud investigations. 4 months after that devastating birthday, we were back in court for what Sarah believed would be the final judgment, officially awarding her the spoils of her carefully executed plan. I'll never forget her expression as she entered the courtroom, confident in her designer suit, faltering slightly when she saw Jessica flanked by 3 additional attorneys and a stack of evidence boxes. The confusion in her eyes when the judge began the hearing by stating that new evidence has been brought to the court's attention. For the next 2 hours, Jessica methodically presented evidence of the embezzlement, the fraud, the conspiracy between Sarah and James to not only divorce me, but to set me up to take the fall for financial crimes. Bank records, text messages, emails, testimony from former household staff who had overheard planning discussions. Andrew Patterson, Sarah's silver-haired attorney, appeared increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence mounted. By the midpoint of Jessica's presentation, he was writing furious notes, no longer making objections. The judge's face transformed throughout the presentation, initial skepticism giving way to visible anger. When Sarah attempted to interject with denials, the judge silenced her sharply. "Mrs. Warner, based on evidence presented today, you are fortunate we're in family court rather than criminal court, though referrals to the district attorney's office will be forthcoming. I suggest you remain silent, unless directly questioned." When Patterson finally stood to respond, his approach had completely changed. "Your Honor, in light of this new information, I must request a continuance to review these serious allegations with my client." The judge denied his request. "Counselor, your client has had months to be forthcoming. The court's patience is exhausted." Before Patterson could respond, he received a note from his assistant. After reading it, he approached the bench for a private conference with the judge. When they finished, Patterson returned to his table and whispered intensely with Sarah, whose face went from confused to horrified. "Your Honor," Patterson said stiffly, "I must regretfully request the court's permission to withdraw as counsel for Mrs. Warner effective immediately due to irreconcilable differences regarding case strategy." The judge granted his request, and just like that, Sarah sat alone at her table, her carefully constructed plan collapsing around her. The final ruling came down like a hammer of justice. The judge reversed all previous temporary orders. My business was returned to my full control, with a forensic accounting team appointed to document the full extent of Sarah's financial misconduct. The house was awarded to me with Sarah, given 3 days to remove personal belongings under supervision. Most painfully for Sarah, the judge issued a statement to be shared with our children, explaining that the court had found evidence of deliberate deception by their mother. "The court cannot force reconciliation between parent and child," the judge said, looking directly at me. "But it can ensure that decisions are made with accurate information, rather than calculated falsehoods." As we left the courtroom, I passed, Sarah still seated alone at her table, staring blankly at the legal papers before her. For a moment, our eyes met. I saw no remorse there, only shock and fury at having lost the game she thought she had won. I simply nodded once, and walked away without a word, just as she had instructed me to do on my birthday, never suspecting how completely the tables would turn. The victory felt hollow at first. I returned to an empty house, still bearing the subtle sense of my family's presence. Abigail's favorite perfume lingering in the upstairs hallway. Jackson's sports equipment still in the garage. Family photos Sarah hadn't bothered to take, perhaps assuming she would return for everything later. Criminal investigations were opened into both Sarah and James's financial dealings. Their relationship collapsed spectacularly once the money and power they had conspired for evaporated. Last I heard, James had fled to a non-extradition country, leaving Sarah to face the consequences alone. But the true pain remained my children's absence. Despite the judge's statement, they refused contact, their silence a wall I couldn't breach. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned they had moved with Sarah to a small apartment across town, their lifestyle dramatically different from what they had become accustomed to. I focused on rebuilding what had been damaged. The business gradually recovered as I personally reached out to clients, stabilized the staff, and implemented new financial controls. I used a portion of my inheritance to establish college trust funds for Abigail and Jackson, regardless of whether they ever spoke to me again. The money was their birthright, not a bribe for reconciliation. Therapy became my Thursday afternoon ritual. Dr. Lewis helped me process the betrayal without becoming bitter, to acknowledge the pain without letting it define me. Your response to this injustice will shape the rest of your life, she told me during one particularly difficult session. Bitterness is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. 6 months after the court ruling, the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. I opened it to find Abigail standing on the porch, thin and pale, looking both older and younger than her 16 years. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. We sat in the kitchen where we had once had family breakfasts, the silence between us heavy with unsaid words. "Mom lied to us," she finally said, staring at her hands. "About everything." "I know," I replied simply. "She and James are over. He took off with what was left of her money." Abigail looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "The apartment is awful. Jackson and I share a room with a curtain between our beds. Mom works as a receptionist now when she's not drinking. I wanted to reach out to comfort her, but held back, uncertain of where we stood. The judge sent us the official finding," she continued. "And Jackson found Mom's journals. The real ones, not the fake ones she created for court. She wrote about her plans, about James, about how they were going to take everything from you." She wiped at her eyes. "We believed her. We treated you so badly, Dad." The word "dad" broke something in me, and suddenly we were both crying, years of pain and misunderstanding flowing between us. That first meeting was just the beginning of a long, difficult healing process. Jackson was more resistant, his teenage pride making reconciliation harder. Our first dinner together, the three of us, was awkward and strained. But it was a start. I never disparaged Sarah to them despite the temptation. They were discovering the truth on their own, and my criticism would only complicate their already difficult position. "Why aren't you angrier?" Jackson asked me months later, as we tentatively resumed our tradition of shooting hoops in the driveway. "If someone did to me what Mom did to you, I'd hate them forever." I considered his question carefully. "Hate takes too much energy, Jackson. Energy I'd rather put into rebuilding what matters, including my relationship with you and your sister." 5 years passed. Abigail headed to college with the trust fund. I had established studying psychology with plans to help families in crisis. Jackson, following 2 difficult years of rebellion and anger, eventually found his path in computer science. Sarah faced legal consequences for the financial fraud, but avoided jail time through a plea agreement that required restitution payments she would likely be making for the rest of her life. Our interactions were limited to necessary communications about the children, civil but distant. Life settled into a new normal. I scaled back my role at the company, prioritizing balance in a way I hadn't before. The lessons of betrayal had taught me that success means nothing without people to share it with honestly. On Abigail's wedding day, 5 years after that fateful birthday, I waited with her in a small room adjacent to the garden where the ceremony would take place. She looked beautiful, nervous, happy. "Dad," she said, adjusting my tie. "Unnecessarily. I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "When everything fell apart when we discovered what Mom had done, I was so ashamed of how I'd treated you that I couldn't imagine you'd ever forgive me." She looked up at me, eyes glistening. "But you did, without making me grovel or suffer. You showed me what real love looks like. Not possession or control, but genuine care for another person's happiness." As I walked her down the aisle minutes later, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The family that matters, I had learned, is not defined by legal documents or last names, but by the people who choose to remain in your life through its darkest moments, who see your broken pieces and still find something worth loving. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward without bitterness? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps me continue sharing these life lessons that remind us all that even in our darkest moments, there's always a path forward to something better. Thank you for listening. And remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the authentic connections we build with others.